Section 1. The mystery of repressed emotions. It's time to figure out exactly why we react to everyday life in ways that even we don't fully understand.
Let's think about this. Why do minor situations sometimes trigger these intense, almost childlike emotional reactions? I mean, have you ever had a moment where someone said something seemingly harmless, maybe a tiny critique at work or just an offhand comment from a friend, and you suddenly felt this massive, overwhelming wave of anger or sadness? An emotion so intense it felt completely out of proportion to what actually just happened. Take a second and really reflect on that. I promise it's not just you overreacting. This is rooted in deep psychology. When your reaction doesn't match the event, that is a huge clue that something much deeper is going on.
Unresolved emotions don't simply vanish. They hide in the shadows of our adult lives, waiting to be understood. It's so true, right? I really want to emphasize this point. Carrying these hidden emotions around is just part of being human. It is absolutely not a personal failure, and it's not a flaw in your character. We are all walking around carrying these shadows. Just acknowledging that these hidden pockets of emotion exist is the absolutely crucial first step in our journey today.
So part 2, the concept of the inner child. How do we actually make sense of these shadows? Let's look at the framework that explains it.
Let's define what we're talking about here. The inner child is the part of our subconscious mind that retains the memories, emotions, and innocence of our early years, heavily influencing our adult behavior. So this isn't just some poetic metaphor, okay? It's a fundamental concept in human psychology. The child you once were is still very much alive right there in your subconscious, and they are actively shaping how you perceive danger, how you accept love, and how you interact with the whole world today. It's really helpful to contrast a nurtured self with a wounded self. When you're operating from a nurtured self, your inner child feels safe. You can express your emotions clearly and you maintain healthy boundaries. It's a peaceful state. But then, look at the wounded self. In this state, there's this deep, lingering fear of abandonment. You might react really defensively to things, and you probably struggle to set boundaries. The big takeaway here is that our internal emotional state completely dictates our adult behavior. If the child inside is wounded, well, the adult outside is going to act out of fear.
Which brings us to Section 3. How are psychological wounds created? Let's gently explore where these internal emotional fractures actually originate.
So what are the core origins of these inner wounds? We're looking at unmet emotional needs, harsh criticism or neglect, sudden traumatic events, and the suppression of authentic feelings. You know, you might have had a roof over your head, but if your emotional landscape wasn't nurtured, a wound forms. Harsh criticism or outright neglect play a massive role in whether or not we feel safe. Sudden traumatic events can deeply shock a developing nervous system. And then there's the suppression of authentic feelings, like being told you shouldn't cry, or you're being too loud, or you shouldn't be angry. Actually, it's fascinating, even seemingly normal childhoods can result in deeply unmet needs. It doesn't always take a massive, severe trauma. Sometimes just chronic emotional suppression is more than enough to create a lasting wound.
Moving on to Section 4. Signs and symptoms of the inner wound. Let's bring this theory back to the present day and see how it shows up in real life.
What do these behavioral symptoms actually look like? Well, we're talking about an intense fear of abandonment, chronic people-pleasing, unexplained anger or outbursts, and extreme perfectionism. An intense fear of abandonment might mean you stay in a really toxic situation just because you're terrified of being alone. Chronic people-pleasing? That's when you constantly silence your own needs just to keep the peace because you're terrified that speaking up will cause a fight. Unexplained anger is usually just the wounded self feeling cornered, lashing out defensively to protect itself. And extreme perfectionism, yeah, that's often just a mask. It's a desperate attempt to prove you're worthy of love and to avoid any sort of criticism. If you recognize any of these in yourself, please know that your struggles are completely valid. They make absolute sense given your history.
It is not your fault that you were wounded, but it is your profound responsibility to heal. Let that sink in for a second. This is the big pivot point for us today. We've done the hard work of diagnosing the issue, we understand the why and the how. Now it's time to step into your own personal power and fix it.
Section 5. Steps toward recovery and healing. This is where we lay out the exact actionable steps for your emotional maturity. Healing really isn't some mystical, unreachable destination. It's actually a very logical, structured process. Step 1 is acknowledgement. Step 2 is validation. And Step 3 is reparenting. By following this simple 3-part framework, you can absolutely begin to untangle all those complex emotional reactions.
Let's start with Step 1, acknowledgement. You need to recognize your unique emotional triggers.
Pause before reacting to stressful situations, and accurately name the emotion you are feeling. The goal here is really just noticing when your inner child has suddenly grabbed the steering wheel. When something upsets you, you have to practice a deliberate pause. Just stop, and in that mindful pause, ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Are you angry? Or are you actually just feeling dismissed, or embarrassed, or maybe scared? This step takes a lot of honesty with yourself.
Once you've acknowledged the feeling, you move to step 2, validation. This means you accept the raw emotion without judgment. Verbally remind yourself you are safe in the present moment, and honor the past pain as real. Don't tell yourself you're being silly or dramatic. Just accept it. Verbally remind yourself, out loud if you have to, that you are safe right now, in this present moment. What you're doing is offering yourself the exact empathy and validation that you probably missed out on in the past. You're learning to treat yourself with immense kindness.
And finally, step 3, reparenting. You need to set healthy and firm boundaries with others, practice daily self-compassion, and actively fulfill your own unmet emotional needs. This literally means stepping up to become the mature, protective adult your inner self always needed. It means learning that it is completely safe to say no. It means being kind to yourself when you make a mistake. And most importantly, it means fulfilling your own emotional needs instead of desperately waiting around for someone else to do it for you. You have to become your own caretaker.